And we're live. I'm Michael Martinez of SEO Theory, and I'm here with Kent Yunk of Roaring Pajamas SEO. Hello,
Hello.
Kent. We're recording this a little bit late. We weren't able to do it on Friday, so we're doing this on Monday, March 14th, and we'll just continue to adjust our schedule as best we can. So I don't know if you can hear it. The wind has been roaring outside my window, shaking the entire building, so it's possible there will be a slight rumble, maybe even a shudder while we're doing this. But Kent and I have been talking for about 20 minutes before we started recording, and so far he didn't. There was no reaction on Kent's part, so I don't think anything.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't sound terrible on my end. I mean, there's a little bit of background noise, but it's not. It's not severe enough to affect quality of your.
Yeah. Well, my phone didn't go off with any tornado alerts or anything like that, so I don't know why the building was shaking. I'm just glad that I'm not buried under it right now. So, well, Kent and I have been kicking around some ideas to talk about, and he neither one of us was entirely enthusiastic about the first idea. But let me cover a point that came up today on Search Engine Roundtable, and there was an interview with John Mueller does regular Google Hangouts with webmasters, and Barry Schwartz of Search Engine Roundtable occasionally reports on these. And so he cited an answer that John gave in one of these Hangouts where someone, I guess, asked about how when a website publishes new content, how does Google handle that? And what John said was that Google will kind of look at what the rest of the site is about and use that as a context to help determine how to include the new content in the search results until it gets more signals to work with, links or whatever. And Barry titled his article as Google confirms that they use site authority signals, which is not at all what John said. And several people, not just me, several people disagreed with him in the comments on his article. But this is, of course, going to feed the page, the domain authority pseudoscience that has plagued the SEO industry for several years now, because people are looking for metrics to replace the toolbar PageRank. And there was never a third-party metric that could replace the toolbar PageRank because it's not computed from Google's data. And Kent brought this up before we started recording. He asked if I wanted to talk about the toolbar PageRank going away. And I was kind of nonchalant about it, but it's not something that has been useful for at least 12 to 13 years in any kind of a search engine optimization capacity. Doesn't mean people haven't been trying to use it. They've been reporting it in tools and claiming it in talking about their websites and things like that, but it's all been meaningless data. And so now that it's going away, a lot of people in the SEO industry are happy, but they're already looking for alternative metrics to use. And domain authority is one metric that has become very popular. It's not the only metric of that type. Ahrefs and Majestic also compute site-wide metrics, which are equally as irrelevant to what Bing and Google are doing as domain authorities. So that's my little spiel about it. Do you want to add anything, Ken?
Well, it's interesting that I think that anybody who sells an SEO tool, right, or an SEO service for creating optimization, I think they need a way to benchmark performance over time, because you can't. Google's not publishing anything as you said, it's not publishing anything of relevance that allows people to actually understand and be able to measure performance over time against a given metric. So there's no benchmarking. There's nothing that says I'm doing well or I'm doing poorly outside of following ranking and organic traffic, right? And so, these toolbar vendors have to find a way to at least benchmark how they're doing against even if it's a phony metric, benchmark themselves against some kind of a metric so that they can see they're making forward progress, rather than just looking at organic traffic and actual rank. So I think there's a really, really interesting trend from these vendors to actually provide things like domain rank and page authority and various measures that sort of help people benchmark their performance.
It's a
Based
noble
on
idea, but it's
is.
misguided. And here's one example of why it's misguided. Spammers can inflate those metrics with websites that are not performing well in Google or Bing. So you can have a high domain authority and your backlinks are coming from websites that are just barely included in the indexes of the major search engines. So, and this is, I say domain authority. There's at least a half dozen of these metrics out there now that I've come across, and so I'm referring to all of them. They're all equally irrelevant and unusable for search engine optimization. Then they are all equally unreliable. The vendors that compute these metrics all go to great lengths to try and filter out bad websites, but they lack one key component of data for every website that they would really need to vindicate their computations to any extent, and that is they're not confirming whether these backlinks that they count towards their computed values are indexed in Google and Bing and passing value through their links. So it's a combination of two things, but I'm treating it as one thing. It's not just enough that the web page where the link is found is indexed in a major search engine. It also has to be passing value. And that's always been the challenge for everybody in the marketing industry. How do you know that a link is helping? It's not so simple to compute.
Well, and that's the point. I mean, you can do experiments to find out if the effect of a link from that domain or that page does have an effect, but nobody's going to go through that level of effort.
No, not when they're selling a service to thousands of companies that are tracking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of websites. That's not really a scalable approach to data collection. But web marketers are putting their trust and faith in these numbers, and these numbers are not usable for this kind of analysis. They're simply not reliable. They're not accurate. They're not relevant to the data that the search engines are using. And unfortunately, I don't want to take money away from somebody that's put a lot of time and effort into providing what they feel is a good service, but people should not be spending money on these metrics. They're not worth it.
Well, and they're going to want an alternative benchmark to hang their hat on, and I don't know that there is a good one.
No, I mean, you're stuck with referral traffic. If it goes up or it goes down, something happened.
Right. So I think the good news is that, hey, they're very creative in the way they've created these tools. I think that's great news, and it does provide some form of benchmarking. But we've been saying as SEOs for the longest time, right? When we go to a client, we tell them, look, we will follow best practices, we will do these things, and yes, we have found in our experience that when we do these things, sites improve. But to that extent, right, we don't know what the Google algorithms are going to do with any given website. We can just apply our craft to that site, but there's no way that we can predict what the performance is going to be. And I know that there are a bunch of SEOs out there that promise and deliver to some degree first page performance.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody can spam a website up to the top. Whether it's going to stay there is another question. And as we found out with the penguin penalties and all the other stuff that came before that, all those spammy tricks got a lot of websites in trouble. So what goes up has to come down. That's just the way it is. It's there. The closest that I think a tool vendor could come to validating the data out there would be if you were to upload your list of backlinks as reported by Bing and Google, and everybody knows that those are not complete lists for the most part. But if you uploaded them to the tool vendor and the tool vendor went out and crawled all those sites and then computed on the basis of their metrics what they had, but that creates a problem for those websites. And that leads to this other point that Kent and I wanted to talk about. A lot of these tool vendors are running rogue crawlers. A rogue crawler is a web crawler that does not honor robots.txt. Now, you should not have to know the name of the crawler in advance. If you, the webmaster, put a wildcard user agent at the bottom of your robots.txt file and say disallow / every crawler that comes along that's not named in the file should be honoring that wildcard. And webmasters don't owe anything to these tool vendors. It's not just the SEO tool vendors. They're a very small fraction of the companies out there that are running crawlers against websites. We block hundreds of crawlers on our network. What is going on is anybody that wants to can download the software for a crawler that's out there for free, and they can just start it up. They go get a cloud hosting account or some cheap web hosting account, and they run it off those servers, and the crawler goes out and starts grabbing web pages off of random websites. They might be using that data to keep their clients aware of who's mentioning them. There are a lot of business intelligence tool vendors out there now. I mean, a lot. The SEO tool vendors are, like I said, just a fraction of the people out there who are crawling. And so you have a lot of brand monitoring services now that are just hitting web servers looking for stuff that isn't there. They're not even trying to index the links. They're just looking for the names of companies or individuals who are paying for brand monitoring. And all of this traffic comes along and it hits your web server, whether you have a dedicated server or a cloud hosting server or shared server or whatever. It's tying up connections, TCP connections for your website, slowing down your website and preventing other people, legitimate people, from getting to your content. There is a movement now among the SEO industry to try and teach people how to speed up websites. And they're doing it wrong for the most part because they don't understand what's going on at the server level. In some cases, people are teaching marketers to embed prefetch directives in all their web pages, which basically tells all the browsers to just go out and start grabbing pages that their algorithms presume or compute will be grabbed next. And so you get a lot of useless page fetches and resource fetches from these browsers, sometimes thousands of browsers that just tie up for server resources. It's not a good idea to put prefetch directives in your page code. Just because some geek at Google or someplace thinks it's a good idea doesn't mean it is a good idea. These people don't run the servers. They're just out there writing code. And there's a complete disconnect between what's going on at the server administration level and what's going on at the browser design level, or whoever it is that's promoting this code. So we don't really want to start uploading links to SEO tool vendors and have them go out and fetch pages from websites just so that they can compute metrics that would still be, while they would be more relevant to what's going on in Bing and Google's databases, they would still not be useful in terms of benchmarking search engine optimization improvements or degradation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I think right now though the use of these bots is really inflating traffic numbers for a lot of sites, and it's doing it in ways that really changes the perception that people have about their site's overall performance. Because when you dig into this and you see all this referral traffic coming from these bots, you realize that, hey, you know what? I saw a big spike in traffic last month, and it was, 80% of that spike came from this. These 8 bot sites, which really, if somebody doesn't know to dig in, they might have the perception that they did an event and they got a big spike in traffic, and they didn't look into the numbers to see where that actual traffic was coming from. And so their immediate view is completely wrong. And we've worked extensively to filter out these bots, and sometimes the Google Analytics filters work, sometimes they don't. But like you said, I mean, there's no way to prevent them from hitting your site using robots text. So it's
Right,
pretty
they're
frustrating.
crawlers. Yeah, the traffic fakers, and of course the company that most people associate with this behavior is SEM Alt, and they're selling analytics tools.
Amazing.
That's basically how they're drumming up business for their tools. Is they're running all these crawlers against everybody, and they're offering better analytics than Google Analytics. But they're not the first company to put in fake traffic referrals. And another area where bots are a huge problem is on websites that are running ads and lead generation forms. The bots come in and click on the ads and try to fill in the lead generation forms. They're doing that deliberately, intentionally, because they're trying to hide their activity as they inflate a certain small number of websites' performance statistics in order to get legitimate ad revenue or whatever. Or I guess it's illegitimate ad revenue. So, I mean, people create rogue bots for all sorts of reasons, and they are a huge problem. Um, they're they're not going to go away anytime soon, as far as I can tell.
I would agree with that. And I'll tell you, nothing is more frustrating than having a weekly meeting with a client where you're saying, and, you know, I know you thought that your traffic was X last month, but that was really Y because of all these crawlers that are, you know, basically pushing up your traffic numbers. And I know that in some cases, you know, even putting the filters in may not have a big enough effect on the overall numbers. So I think part of it exposes the inability of GA to do a good job sometimes to filter this stuff out, even though the filter's in place. And the other problem is that, you know, you still have people that don't look closely enough, thinking that, hey, you know, my traffic is going way up. In reality, it's not.
Yeah,
It's about where it was, if not lower, because these bots are overinflating the numbers. So it kind of reminds me of back in the mid 90s when, you know, websites just started being created and everybody reported hits, right?
mm-hmm.
So, you know, they'd be like, oh man, there were so many hits on our site. And then people started to go, well, how is this site getting more hits than that other site, but not necessarily more traffic? Because hits was just the number of objects on the web page. And so web pages that had more objects on them had a higher hit number, right? And it was one of these, it's like sometimes it's a statistic number, right? You know, sometimes you can play with the numbers based on what's actually happening. And in this case, you know, it wasn't getting any more traffic than their competitors, but because they had more images on the site, more elements on the page, they were getting a much higher hit number, which they considered to be a metric.
And I think the hit counter service contributed to the confusion because they were just counting one hit per web page. You'd put the counter code on all of your pages, and then if somebody came and loaded the page, they recorded one hit for that page load. They didn't record hits for all the other things. So you had hit counter recorded visits, or not really visits, views is what they were recording. And then you had your server-side log files recording hits, which were all the files being fetched. And of course, we had to learn how to filter out all the non-page references in order to see what the actual page views were. And then everybody goes, well, you know, page views aren't really helpful. We want to know about visits. And the problem with the visits is not only that can they be faked, you don't know when a visit starts or begins. And we just sort of like arbitrarily decide, well, we're going to have a 30-minute window or a 10-minute window. And you could actually, I could sit here right now and visit a website on my phone and visit a website on my computer. And because I'm coming through the same router, it'll look like one visit, but it's two different devices. And I might be doing two different things at the same time on this website. So is that one visit? Is that two visits? You know, it's like not really. I mean, they're going to be two different cookies. I might block cookies in one, not block cookies in the other. I might have ad blocking on the computer, no ad blocking on the phone. So it's two very different experiences. And if you look at what happens in a typical corporate office, everybody's going out through one corporate router. You might have 100 people coming off the same IP address looking at the same website, and so
Right.
all these metrics are kind of like fuzzy at the very
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. At the very least, I think we try to do our best with the tools that we have on hand to give customers and people that we know, help them to sort of understand what it's telling you and what it's not telling you, and why you should be cautious of the data.
Yeah. So I have shared how I filter SEM alt in Google Analytics with my newsletter subscribers in the past. We experimented with a number of different methods last year. You basically have to attack the problem from two different directions. First, you have to filter out traffic as it comes in, and second, you need to filter out traffic that you've incidentally recorded before you started filtering the incoming traffic. And so a lot of people are taking one approach or the other. They're either filtering the reports or they're filtering incoming traffic, but they're still getting bad data into Google Analytics.
Mm-hmm.
We work with Google Analytics with our clients. We don't really use it so much for our own sites that much. We use multiple analytics packages and compare the data. I'll use 3 or 4 different analytics packages on one site just because you get more reliability and consistency through that kind of comparative analysis. But we start with creating a filter in the admin section where we exclude all the traffic from an ISP domain that ends with the domain name. So if it comes in from like k6666521.domain.com, everything is filtered out. Everything is blocked from that subdomain too. When you go into the reporting, the advanced filters allow you to exclude things from subdomains and hosts and things like that. And people will save these reports. But the problem there is that as you get more of these domains or whatever coming in, then your reports continue to be inflated
Right.
with stuff. So we're constantly refiguring filters. On some websites I don't even save filters. I do my reporting filters on the fly because it's just easier to include a certain number. Usually I'm just looking at Google Organic anyway. For SEO, Google Analytics, you just look at the Google Organic channel and ignore everything else. Even there, the data is not very good. In the last newsletter that I sent out, I think it was last week's, might have been the week before, I did a case study on Google Analytics versus Google Search Console data, and I tried to show how they're both unreliable, mainly because of sampling. But you're really not getting good data either from Google Analytics or Google Search Console. And what you want to do is kind of flatten the signal with some measurement tricks that I explained in the newsletter. And by using that flat signal, anytime something moves outside that range, you know that something significant has happened. And then you can go dig into the data more deeply and take a look at what happened and try to figure out why it happened, so that if it was a good thing, you can make it happen again. And if it was a bad thing, you kind of avoid that in the future.
That's a really good point.
When you and I were at Quinn Street, they had a whole department of data. What do they call it? Data analysts. Well, I mean, some of them were learning algorithm specialists. And of course, they were using that. They were using that department to measure conversion rates optimization more than anything else, I think. But I had a couple of conversations with guys on their team about how the robot activity was just really hammering their data center. And when a company like Quinn Street, that's dealing with hundreds of millions of visits a month, complains about rogue crawlers, it kind of puts your little world of dedicated servers and cloud hosting accounts into perspective. It's a much bigger problem than what it feels like when you actually dig into your own data. It's really a widespread issue. I would say that maybe 40 to 50% of all traffic on the internet is bogus. Easily 40 to 50%.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And it's not making anybody any money except the guys that are selling it.
I can see that. I can see that, and I think there's opportunity out there, and people are going to take advantage of that opportunity. Unfortunately, for people that are earnestly trying to surf the web, get a good user experience, and in companies that are really trying to do business on the web, I think it makes for a lot of noise for them and wasted effort on the part of the IT teams. So
Yeah, I mean, there are IT teams that do almost nothing but filter out bad data from a company's data, which is, it's good that there are people that are getting jobs like that, and it's sad that we need to hire people to do jobs like that. So when you're a small SEO agency trying to explain to clients why their data is not so reliable, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because you can't really offer them the kind of filtration that they need. You can just kind of put, I guess, do first or second aid on the problem. You can't solve
right.
it.
Correct.
So I don't want to say it's a band-aid solution, because it's not a band-aid solution. When somebody goes into Google Analytics and sets up sophisticated filters to get rid of all this crap, that's not a band-aid. A band-aid is you change one thing. If you're constantly finagling with filters, that's more like first or second aid. That's not a band-aid.
Right.
And I don't want to take anything away from people who do that kind of work and are very good at it. So
that makes sense. Well, I think we've come to the end of our 30-minute period again.
Yeah. And I hope it's a good one. I hope people are enjoying these videos now that we've figured out how to get more people to watch them. And we're going to keep doing this every week for as long as we can. And sooner or later, we'll probably open up the videos to comments or something like that. It's probably still a couple months down the road. To be honest, I'm not really looking forward to moderating comments, but we'll see. So you're welcome to use the SEO Theory comment form, contact form to let me know what you think of the videos, and I'll pass it on to Kent, and we'll just keep plugging away. So
excellent.
All right.
Nice work, Michael. I really enjoyed today.
I did too. So, and we're signing off.